Hi guys, this is a really quick, I've never done this before, but a really quick thing I've done just for YouTube, talking about Unholy Death Knights and War Within. It's gonna be pretty quick. It's one take, but we're gonna talk about the new things that Death Knights get going into War Within. So I guess to start with, we'll just attack a dummy for a second. You can kind of see, but the first thing you'll notice is that outside of A-Bomb, rotationally it's pretty similar. A lot of the same buttons. You jump on a horse every so often, but really similar. There's a change to Sudden Doom that makes it cost runic power now, which is actually a nice change. Rotation feels pretty fluid. There's also a nice change to Unholy Blight that makes it auto-cast on your Dark Transformation, but very familiar if you played Dragonflight. But there are two main changes we'll look at today. The first one is the Honor Talent changes. They actually overhauled both the General Tree on the left and also the Unholy Tree on the right, and also the Frost Tree if you play Frost. And the second part is they've got these new hero talents that are coming in. To summarize the way they work, Rider is currently the stronger one. That basically summons pets summons riders with you, and you can basically kind of adjust what you do based on what rider's out. And when you press Army or A-Bomb, you get all four of them, which is very powerful. And then there are like little perks, like this one here's a pretty major one. You get an AMS on you, cast at random times, and it's basically a full strength AMS every 45 seconds, which is really OP. You get your mount or your Death's Advance mount, and then you have a choice here between extending with runic power the horsemen that are out, or doing more damage with your Death Coil when you've got two or more out, which is only really during your A-Bomb anyway. And you play Sanlayan. There's other perks there as well, like disease damage and stuff, but we're not going to worry about that. That's going to get probably tuned. Sanlayan, the basics of Sanlayan is you leech. You have a proc that makes you get more haste. That's what Essence of the Blood Queen is. And then you get Vampiric Strike, which is a proc that makes you proc on Death Coil, Epidemic, Death Strike, which make your Scourge Strike a Vampiric Strike, which leeches. And that's the basics of that. There are some other things that happen as well that are interesting. So like, I think when you Dark Transform, all of your Scourge Strikes become the Vampiric Strikes. But the short of this is right now, Sanlayan doesn't actually feel any different to play. Neither one really feels any different to play, to be honest. They both feel virtually the same. They're just kind of like empowering different things. But Rider is currently the stronger one by quite a bit, in my opinion, from a PvP standpoint. And then in terms of your talents, they did a kind of a complete overhaul here. It's pretty interesting. So the theme of all of the talent reworks they've done so far, pretty much, is they've taken a bunch of talents that previously were 2-pointers that were really good. So like two examples are like Veteran of the Third War was previously 2 points. It's now 1 point. Unholy Bond was previously 2 points, and it was the bottom of the tree, and now it's a 1 point. So a bunch of things got shuffled around the tree. You'll notice like attenuations up higher in the tree. There are also some new things. So like, for example, I was testing out Ice Prison, which is a Chains of Ice root talent. But there's lots of different options that are interesting. They don't change, like in terms of like how you would spec, they don't change off like a whole bunch from what I've seen. Like you tend to kind of want to play the same stuff. The most powerful new changes in the General Tree, I think you're going to see and be interested in looking at, are Osmosis, which is AMS, gives you 15% more healing taken. And keep in mind, your horseman's casting it on you as well. That's really powerful. Null Magic is probably the most powerful thing you're going to see, which is you take 10% less magic damage, and harmful magic damage or harmful magic effects are 35% less on you, so like Polymorph, Fair, etc. Very OP. Probably PvP nerfed if it is, like probably should be PvP nerfed. And then you've got Vesicle Shell, which is when you cast AMS on yourself, it puts a mini shell on 2 people around you, and it reduces the effects on them as well. So you could technically like shell yourself on a polymorph, and it, like say the poly was on your healer, it would make the poly shorter on them, which is interesting. I haven't, you know, again, there's not a whole bunch of like rated PvP to mess around with on here, so it's not something I've got to actually like really mess with. But I think that probably would be pretty powerful. It's also a very, very small. That 294,000 shield absorb is actually tiny. Shell at the moment on here is like 2 million, it's like 3 million, like it's 3.9 million plus whatever the nerf is on it. So the shell is tiny. 294,000 is nothing. But anyway, that's there. The other one that's interesting, I think that people could be interesting, is this Unyielding Will talent, which is AMS is increased by 20 seconds, and it removes all harmful magical effects when activated. It's very specific. Now, tragically, it doesn't interact with. Like, it would be the most. This would be the most powerful talent in the game if it actually worked with Spell Warden. I don't know if they intend it for that. They probably shouldn't be that way. But basically, like, you can see what would happen, right? If you could play Vesicle Shell, or if you play Unyielding Will, and you could play Spell Warden, you could shell your teammate and break their CC, because it would remove the CC on them, right? But it doesn't work right now. It would be interesting if it did, but you know, it doesn't right now. Those are most of what you're gonna see. You're gonna probably play something similar to this at the moment, but interestingly, you have got a bunch of interesting utility talents you can play as well. So like Blood Draw is pretty massively buffed for your self healing. If you're against physical teams, you've got the option to like drop some of these talents, which you probably wouldn't very often, but you have got the option of dropping things and picking up more defensive oriented talents as well. Leech, you can like reduce people's attack speed, that kind of thing, the usual stuff. But you've got some things you can min-max with. You'll probably mostly play the same stuff. Maybe you won't play Grip of the Dead and you'll play like Wraithwalk and stuff, but yeah, you'll see something like that. Most Death Knights I've looked at so far are playing some variation of these kinds of talents, from the left hand side at least. And on the right hand side, the big changes I think are to Blight. We talked about that a little bit earlier on. So when you press Dark Transformation, your pet just has Blight around him. It's really, really nice for your opener, because your opener lost to global, and your global is also just like, yeah, it's nice. Very, very nice change. Defile no longer gives you any mastery, which is a bit unfortunate, but you have got really, really short cooldown. But it's a really short cooldown with Rider, and it's with a slow effect and stuff. And there's also a change to Festamite. The Festamite one's kind of interesting. So on live right now, it's a 20-second flat duration, right? And then you can buff its stacks. So now you'll notice when I attack this dummy, if you look at my top right here, Festamite says 17 seconds. Now if I press this again, it goes back to 20 seconds. But what's actually happening is that the change to Festamite is each stack. It shows the total number of stacks, but each stack is actually they're individual. So you could have 20 individual stacks. So you'll see in a second my Festamite fell, my first stack fell. It's a really nice change, because it means you don't have to worry about like using like let's say you've got 10 stacks and they're about to expire. You don't have to feel bad about pressing APOC anymore, because now you get the full value. You'll get 4 stacks for 20 seconds, which is a really nice change, especially in PvP where you can't control those types of things. So that's the Festamite change. In terms of your actual talents, right now there's kind of recently been some nerfs to like Chlorine and a few other things. Some of the modifiers have been removed on here. So like I think the Chlorine Shadows modifier has been removed. I think the Death Coil modifier has been removed, and I think the Wounds modifier has been removed. But they're still all really good. Unfortunately, and quite importantly, your Magus is nerfed on here still. There's still a big nerf to them. So you can't really play the Magus build at all. From what I've seen, there's not really like there would be a whole bunch of depth to this right hand side if there were Maguses in the game. But yeah, so the build that you'd play right now on here is going to feel pretty similar when you already play on live. You're going to play around Plaguebringer, empowered dots, and Ebon Fever now empowers all 3 dots. So like you get all 3 diseases are OP, and you'll actually notice that Frost Fever is your top damage quite often now as well. But yeah, it's gonna feel very similar to the live kind of play style. You've got a secondary build you can play that plays Clawing and probably sacrifices like something like this to play it, and that just is the same exact. It plays the exact same way. You still end up playing Ebon Fever because it's just too good value to play, and there's no real alternative right now that I'm aware of. But those are your kind of 2 builds on beta right now. And again, if you see a change to Magus at any point during the beta cycle, a lot of other builds open up when that happens, because there's like a whole bunch of new talents that you can't really play right now that center around your Magus. You can proc random Maguses and stuff too with this Doom Bidding talent. They're just not really optimal to play at this stage. I think Decomp, Doom Bidding, Unholy, there's a ton of different options you could play with it if they were actually good. But at this stage, they are not. So this is kind of where you're at. It plays pretty similar, but it is very, very fun. There's one other change we'll talk about. The very, very last one is the change to Strangulate. So you'll notice that Strangulate is still an auto talent, but it actually replaces your Asphyxiate. It went from a 15-yard range to a 20-yard range. It went from a 1-minute cooldown down to a 45-second cooldown, and it lasts for 5 seconds instead of 4, but it replaces your Asphyxiate. It's actually not a big deal at all. It's actually straight like a really, really nice change, because you got to keep in mind that most comps that play with Death Knights don't rely on your stun, and Asphyxiate's a 3-second stun in PvP anyway, right? So it's already a really, really bad stun to begin with. So if you're playing a comp like DK Rogue, DK, or like DHDK, you're playing with classes that can stun. TSG, any comp really, you're playing with classes that can stun for you. So we're not particularly unhappy with that change at all. It's a nice thing to have, and you can still play Asphyx if you really want to. But some nice changes for DKs. DKs so far feel very, very fun. They're actually one of the more OP specs on beta right now. Although Rider is definitely a big part of that. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I will look into doing more of these in the future.